The Detroit Lions have 2 first-round picks, but they made some nice additions to their defense and free agency. What direction should they go? We're going to discuss it next on the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's your boy, Damian Parson, on the ones and twos. As always, you can find me on Twitter at DP_NFL. I am a national scout over with the Draft Network and your favorite yet local running back guru. And as always, we're going to talk championship things and rings with my guy, Keith Sanchez. You can find him on Twitter at The Talent Code. Talk to him, Keith.
What's up, Locked On family? This is Keith Sanchez, senior draft analyst with the Draft Network, man. And like DP said, man, 2019 national champion. Yes, those LSU Tigers. And you know why we're here, man. We're here to bring championship level content, philosophy, prospects surrounding the NFL draft. And DP, man, we have some really good things lined up today. We have Coach K's keys thoughts, man. Yes, our new segment, we're introducing some key thoughts that I have surrounding the NFL draft. Then we have stock up, stock down coming at you, but we're going to start with those might be the new kings of the North, man. Before we get started with that, DP, let's go ahead and kick it off with one of our sponsors, man.
Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game. That's Locked On in all caps. The Detroit Lions, new kings of the North, Keith? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that where it's trending, man? You look at what this team, like under the coach, Dan Campbell, who I think both of us really like, for what he's been able to do, right? Man, they've made some progress, some improvements, and this is a team that's really trending in the right direction, Keith. They have 2 first-round picks, and I think they've done a good job so far addressing the defensive side of the ball in free agency real quick, getting a guy on the D-line like Isaiah Buggs, Cameron Sutton from the cornerback from the Pittsburgh Steelers, 3 years, $33 million. I think 22 and a half of that is fully guaranteed. Grabbing a guy that I call a dog, Emmanuel Mosley from the San Francisco 49ers defense, right, with DeMeco Ryans. And then, just continuing to add to this defense and getting, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson from the Philadelphia Eagles, Keith. So having 2 first-round picks, tell the family what, in your thoughts, what direction should they go after addressing the secondary somewhat in free agency?
Yeah, so I mean, first off, you have to give them a round of applause, man, because they looked at their roster, and I love teams that's very self-aware, right? Both ways.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they're good at, but also know where the spots that they're bad at. And the Detroit Lions, they realize this entire defense is bad, right? And we can't fill all of these holes through the NFL draft. So free agency, we have to use free agency to supplement some of this, right? We have to get some things figured out. And it's been clear that they decided, you know what, we're going to attack the defensive backfield. We're going to make sure we improve that. And man, this Chauncey Gardner-Johnson compared with their second-year player now, Kirby Joseph. Yes. Remember the game? He picked off Aaron Rodgers 3 times in the season finale. Only one of them counted because they kept being penalties, but he picked them off 3 times, man. So you add those 2 guys, now you have a dynamic 1-2 punch at the safety position, and then you're adding veterans at the cornerback position. So with that being said, you look at the NFL draft, and man, they're sitting at the 6th spot. I think if these quarterbacks make a run and we get all 4 of them, right? If we get all 4 quarterbacks within the top 6 picks, that means that the Detroit Lions are probably still going to have a shot at a Will Anderson, a Jalen Carter, a Tyree Wilson, a Miles Murphy, right? They're going to have a shot at those guys, which is great at the end of the day, right? Like you're in a really good
Yep.
spot because you can continue to add to this defensive line and add to what some people would say is premium positions. And the thing is this is a deep cornerback class. So you do that at number 6. And at number 18, who knows what goes on in the NFL draft, right? And if there's still a good corner, there's a possibility that there's still one of these corners that we grade really high to be there. Or even if you want to go after a DJ Turner, add another Michigan man, you had success with Aiden Hutchinson, you want to kick DJ Turner into the nickel position. Now you have flexibility, you can play man, and you know that you have a guy that has the foot speed to run with anybody on the offensive side of the ball.
Nah, Keith, those are very, very good points, man. I think, especially like you said, man, if we get the first 4 quarterbacks off the board in the first 5 picks, right, where 4 of the 5 are quarterbacks, like for Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn and that brass, that front office to be at 6 and look at the board and still see a potentially Tyree Wilson, Will Anderson, and Jalen Carter, man. Like that's big time. And I believe they ran a 3-4 kind of 3, odd front, on base downs or rundowns last year, right? So you think about where they could potentially go. They may need to add a nose tackle in that situation. But if Will Anderson's there, I think that should be the move. If you're talking about going in the direction, you pair up Aiden Hutchinson with Will Anderson on opposite sides. Bro,
good luck. And I'm gonna be honest, even if he's sitting there at number 5, and I think Seattle has the number 5 pick, I would be willing to move up to number 5 to get Will Anderson. Like, look, I'll give
they
y'all
have 2 second-round picks as well.
Yeah, I'll give y'all the extra second round. That's fine.
Yeah.
I want to walk into next year and I want to be like, what? Yeah. I have Aiden Hutchinson on one side and I have Will Anderson on the other side. That's how I want. If I'm Dan Campbell, if I'm Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator, I want that feeling, right? I just want to know how that feels to have 2 bookend guys, and you're not talking about high level talent, but you're talking about high level character guys. The Detroit Lions, from a program standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, with those 2 guys as the face of their franchise, I feel like you're talking about a new day, right? And you're talking about a player-led team. And I'll tell you this, DP, and speaking on a player-led team, I had a chance to talk with, when I was at LSU, so we had legendary coach John Robinson. So he coached USC in the 70s, right? So that's when you're talking about like Marcus Allen and, like when they were winning national championships every year, right? And, he was like, man, he said, where you want to get to your team to when you have success, right? He said, when you're at a good spot. He said, when the players are coaching themselves, when that standard has been set and the players are coaching themselves. And that's to my point to with Will Anderson, Aiden Hutchinson. Those are players that can coach the other players, right? Like they will set the standard of, we're not doing this, right? Like being average is not a thing. And you think about a guy they lost in free agency, but Jamal Williams, right? When everybody seen that HBO, clip, I think everybody wanted to put on some shoulder pads and helmets and just go hit somebody, right? Just, we don't have much left in the tank, man. But I just want one more play to play with Jamal Williams. Just one more shot, man. I think that's how everybody felt. So, DP, I think it's really good. I have one question, though. We talked about the defensive side of the ball real quick. Is there any offensive player that you think that they should go after in the first round?
Man, losing TJ Hawkinson was, to me, it was a big move, right? Moving on from him, you knew you weren't going to pay him, and you got an extra second round pick out of it, if I remember correctly. Because Keith, and for the family, for the listeners, they have 5 picks in the top 100, like 5. They got 2 firsts, 2 seconds, because that one of the seconds from Minnesota for DJ Hawkinson. Then they have the original 3rd, which is the 81st pick in the draft. They have 5 in the top 100. So I absolutely think that if they wanted to go tight end, a Dalton Kincaid, a Luke Musgrave, with that 18th pick, right? And because this is a deep cornerback class, their first second round pick is pick 48. So they could still get another starting corner. I would err on the side of caution because I do believe that I've been saying it. I'm going to continue to say it. Keith, guys, I think there's going to be a run on corners in the first round. You know what I mean? I think there's going to be that Witherspoon, Porter, Gonzalez. Like, I think Banks works himself in there, potentially Emmanuel Forbes. I think we could see anywhere from 4 to 7 corners off the board by like pick 27, pick 25, 27. I truly believe that. And if that's the case, I'd rather get one. I'd rather just go full defense in the first round. But like you said, I mean, you think about adding, really going forward and adding that Will Anderson to Aiden Hutchinson. Now you have a situation where, truthfully, you got two guys that you can't double. You can't double either one of them. And,
Right.
and it's gonna, you able to get another interior defensive lineman in the later rounds that can push the pocket and everything. You got Pascal, I think, is the defensive lineman from Kentucky. It's gonna be interesting to see. But this team, I think they're setting themselves up, understanding that the Kings of the North last year were the Vikings, right? But the Vikings showed chinks in the armor all season, and it eventually bit them when you lose to Daniel Jones and the Giants in the playoffs. And I think the Lions smell blood, not in the water, because they're not sharks, they're lions. They sniff and know that their prey is near, but their prey is wounded. And I think the Lions are setting themselves up, Keith. Guys, I think they're setting themselves up to take this division and finally get back to the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I got two names, man, offensively that I think they should simply, if it's in the first round, go after difference makers, right? So if the
Yeah.
difference makers, there are two guys that I think that have the potential to just be the best offensive players on the field, and that's
Mm-hmm.
Quentin Johnston and that's Bijan Robinson.
Bijan
If
Robinson.
those
Yeah.
guys are available at those picks, I think they should go ahead and take them in the first round, and you draft those guys and know that those guys are difference makers overall. But man, look, DP, we talked about the Detroit Lions, man, but there's another segment coming up that we're introducing to the people, man. Listen, right now at the Draft Network, man, we're going through our cross checks. So we're watching every player in the country. We're taking this thing position by position. And we're going through the guys, and we want to give you our guys that our stock may be up or our stock may be down on, man. So coming up next, man, we have a new segment, stock up, stock down. Let's get into it.
The number one sports book in America is FanDuel. And if you are a new customer, it's great news for you because you get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. There's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. All you have to do is download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from money line to NBA point scores and threes drained. Honestly, you can go spreads, player props, like player points, rebounds, and assists. FanDuel lets you combine your bets at a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay, guys. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to fanduel.com/locked on. That's fanduel.com/locked on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Stock up, you know what I mean? We're not talking. We're gonna talk some trades and who's trending up, who's trending down. Keith, I want to kick it off to you, man. Tell the family what prospects right now are trending up for you.
Zay Flowers, Zay Flowers, Zay Flowers, Zay Flowers, man. I finally got a chance to get real eyes on this guy. I went in depth with him, studied him. We're talking 4 or 5 games, watching everything this guy does. And I think he has a chance to be a difference maker offensively. This is a guy that, like for the skill position guys that's quote unquote listed in the first round, I think his name deserves to be mentioned in there because of what he can provide. And listen, I'm looking at this guy as a wide receiver, but also another guy that you look at as an offensive weapon. And the most light comp that I have for usage, and I think he's just scratching the surface. So I want y'all to revisit this thought next year, right? And that's Kadarius Toney. And the reason I'm saying Kadarius Toney because when he was with the Giants, we know that quarterback situation was not good. He got traded to the Chiefs and he had impact plays. Now I'm talking about having impact plays an entire season. And I think Zay Flowers can do those same things: the short area quickness, the run after the catch, the contact balance, the physicality, and then you see the passion that he plays with, man. Like he wants to put people face in the dirt. Then also, I think he's more of a wide receiver than what Kadarius Toney was. Like I think he's more of a true wide receiver. But I'm saying, when you're talking about doing different things and where the NFL offenses are now, as far as how they're able to scheme guys open, and bubble screens and different things like that. Zay Flowers deserves to be mentioned as a wide receiver, but also as an offensive weapon because I think he has that skill set.
Keith, I like that. I want to throw out another name to you for a comp. And I won't listen. Let me preface this, guys. I'm not saying he's this guy, right? So Keith, don't
Here we
even try it
go.
because I know what you're
Here
gonna
we
do.
go. Here we go.
But
Here we
you
go.
think about usage. You brought up Kadarius Toney. What about another SEC great, Percy Harvin, in terms of how he was used?
I like that. I like that. And I don't. There's room for that, right? There's room for that type of player, especially when he was with Seattle. The biggest thing that held Percy Harvin back, right, was his injuries.
Injuries.
That was his
Yeah.
biggest thing. But when he was on the field, the guy was effective, right? He was at some points he was dominant, and even not even with Seattle when he was with Minnesota. Like this was a damn good football player that helped them. I mean, they lost to the Saints in the NFC Championship game, I believe. But he was a damn good player that year. It was injuries that hurt Percy Harvin, that
Yeah.
hurt his effectiveness overall. But I do like that comp, and I actually, I'm telling you right now, and it's in front of people, so there's no getting mad. I'm gonna steal that one. I'm definitely stealing that comp. And I'm going to post it on Twitter, man. So our listeners go interact with it and everything, and let's talk about it. But I'm being honest with you, right? So it's not really
I
stealing if I'm
appreciate
telling you we're gonna roll with it. But
Hey,
I
it's
do I
like
do
looking
like
at
that comp,
a
Rick Flowers.
Twitter thread and you see that meme and I'm stealing your meme. Like, what I'm saying? I totally appreciate the honesty. Um, man, no, I like I love Zay Flowers and I love the fact that you're on board with him as a first round pick. But Keith, I'm gonna drop a name for myself, man, in terms of stock up, sticking with the wide receiver position. That's Michigan State's Jaden Reed, and we texted
Yeah,
about him over the
yeah.
weekend, man. Just getting deep into his tape and I'm again, I'm going to do it, but I need people to understand what I'm doing here. I'm not calling him this player, but I see similarities where there's like some Stephon Diggs to his game. You know what I mean? In terms of
So you
understanding
calling
how.
Jaden Reed Stephon Diggs?
See, don't start that. Don't start that. Like, like I see some Stephon Diggs in there, and I think if just to kind of paint the picture, a Nelson Aguilar that's consistent and can catch the ball consistently and be the weapon we saw in Las Vegas, right? When that one year he was with the Raiders, I think that's what you can get at kind of at minimum with Jaden Reed. I think you can play inside and out, Keith. I loved his tempo and how he really kind of slow plays certain routes and works defenders and not really give a telltale of what he's running. You know what I mean? Like as coaches what we always taught, growing up, make everything look like a fade until it's not. And he does a good job of doing those type of things where he gets the DB to commit his hips going north and south, where he can break either direction, east or west, or back south himself. But also he's got some dog in him, man. You know what I mean? 5'10", 5'11", 4'5". But I think it was a play again. I believe it was Wisconsin. I think it was the last play of the game. Might have been the play that won the game. I'm not sure, but it was a fade. They singled him up on the right side of the field, 1-on-1, and they threw a fade. Corner was in great position, playing chest to chest. You know what I mean? They're both looking for the ball, but Jaden Reed had that "I wanted more" type of
Mhm.
mentality, and he took it from him, right? So he's got some of that dog in him too, Keith, but then also the competitiveness, right? We were in Indy. Kid came up to the
Yeah.
podium. We thought he was just being cool. Keith, he got the dark shades on, looking swaggy. No, my man had an eye infection. He just didn't want to show it, right? Like he didn't want to, so make everyone succumb to it.
And
He's out there balling out at the combine, catching passes in the gauntlet drill when one of his eyes are almost closed. Keith, you can't teach that type of dedication, man.
Nah, and then at the Senior Bowl, I was so happy to
Yes.
see him show well at the Senior Bowl because this is a guy, and we have to be honest about this, right? And we keep saying this, and we'll continue to say this on this podcast that receivers' production are directly linked to the quarterback. So when I'm
Mm-hmm.
watching this guy throughout the season, I'm diving into it, evaluating him and everything. It's the production fluctuates from game to game, and you like where's the consistency? But you also have to look at the quarterback position and understand, the dynamics of that situation. But I was so glad at the Senior Bowl I was able to see him, his athletic profile, who he was as a person, got a chance to talk with him. And this guy profiles he's a guy that I think can meet that threshold of possibly a number 2 wide receiver, a number 2 option, for an NFL team. And he'll be a damn good number 3. But DP, man, we went through our stock up, guys, man. We have stock down. And I'm gonna say this: stock down is relative to where we think that this guy is projected amongst the NFL
Yeah.
community. And I'm gonna say this: my guy is Jordan Addison, and I think he's a good football player. I do. I think he's a good football player. But you're talking about a true number 1 or that X wide receiver for you. I don't know if he's that, man. And you just mentioned this guy's name, and these are 2 guys that came to mind when I thought of Jordan Addison. I thought of Nelson Aguilar, and I thought of Jeremy Maclin, and
Mm.
both good wide receivers can
Good number
produce at a
twos.
high. Yeah, but they're number 2s ultimately. Like, and
Yep.
that's what I got from shoot, I'm blanking now. Jordan
Jordan
Addison.
Addison. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I got from him. A really good number 2 wide receiver. But I think the career trajectory of both of those guys, when you're talking about Jeremy Maclin and Nelson Aguilar, I think you can directly associate that to what Jordan Addison can be as a football player. Where I think there will be some high level moments, but you won't be able to say throughout the entire season or throughout the entire career.
Yeah, I think people have linked him to 2 Alabama receivers, Devonta Smith, which me and you debunked that theory in our first week on taking over this podcast. If you haven't checked that out, go way back in the archives a couple weeks ago, a month ago, and you can find that. And then Calvin Ridley, and he just didn't test anywhere close, in my opinion, to what Calvin Ridley was, explosively, right? So I'm with you there, Keith. Another big name for me is tight end Michael Mayer, and I know some people may feel some type of way about this, Keith, but diving deep into the tape for him, he's safe. That's the word I continue to wrote down. He's a safe, good player. But you're talking about top 10, top 20 pick in the first round. He's not a great athlete, not explosive. In terms of creating separation and creating it against man-to-man coverage, there's peaks and valleys to it, right? Like I think he's a solid route runner, but he's kind of sluggish with his releases. But then also for the way that people put him over like a Dalton Kincaid is, he's a better blocker. Well, that could be debatable because he's not a drive blocker. He's not a powerful guy that just, especially for a guy his size. We saw him in person. He's rocked up. He's a big body. You know what I mean? You don't see him driving and moving guys off the ball, Keith. So I think that's a big problem for me. And then, just the athleticism in general. I think if the comp truly is Jason Witten, I'm not drafting Jason Witten in the top 20 picks in the first round. I am not. So that's where I'm at with Michael Mayer.
Man, he's tough, right? And I just finished him because I do agree with you with everything with the athleticism. But it's also, okay, usage, right? Like, okay, if I'm using this guy just to get uncovered underneath, you know what I'm saying? And then also one thing I give him credit for is that the guy, it goes twofold, right? Because I'm going to say this, then I'm going to say the opposing argument for that, right? That he's great at contested catches, right? But then, some coaches, they were like, all right, well, why he always in contested catch situations?
Correct.
Right? It's because of the separation. But I think that placing him, I agree, like, okay, the top 10, top 15 value may be rich, but I think there's a spot for him, you know what I'm saying? Like the back end of the first round to the second round, because I think that when you watch him in the IQ and just understanding how to play the ball and things like that, I think he's really good for that. And then I'll say this, I think he plays well with a quarterback like Joe Burrow, because Joe Burrow does a really good job of giving his receivers a chance at 50-50 balls, right? Like that's what Jamar Chase's game is, right? It's 50-50 balls. And Joe Burrow trusts to throw it and he puts it in a good spot. So I think Michael Mayer does a good job at that. So I think that could be a fit to really watch out for, right? Like the Cincinnati Bengals and Michael Mayer, because he fits exactly how Joe Burrow likes to throw the football, go through his progressions, and give his wide receiver chances, man. But look, man, we went through stock up, stock down. But like you said, man, new segment. We're rolling the segments out, man. We have Coach K's, yes, Keith Thought, man. Keith Thoughts. It's a tongue twister. Don't try to say it. I tried to say it 5 times. I probably messed it up a couple times, man. But I have a Keith Thought in regards to the NFL draft and how teams should go about building their teams coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Guys, you've heard me talk about this mobile game app before. If you've ever thought you make a good GM, you got to give this game a try. It's not as easy as you may think to create a dynasty. And with Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, managing all the finances, including negotiating player salaries and terms, navigating your franchise through free agency, the draft, injuries, and player personnel issues with all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic gaming world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On NFL Draft listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM, your dynasty starts today. Let's hear it. Let's debut it. Let's get into it.
We only have a couple minutes, so I have to get this off. I have to say this, and we're just going to have to talk to our listeners, via Twitter and everything. But this is my thought, man. For these teams in the back end of the first round, I'm offloading those first round picks, man. I don't want them. Go ahead
Mm.
and I'm gonna trade them for a proven veteran that can come right in and immediately
Just for
help
this
my,
draft or just period?
probably period. Probably
Okay.
period. I'm gonna be completely honest with you because in most drafts, right? You're talking. So let's say even say last year's draft, right? You're talking
Mhm.
about Lewis signed for the Minnesota Vikings, right? Like how much of a difference did he make versus offloading that first round pick, right? To get something that can immediately help your team. How about an interior defensive line? And you're talking about Hargraves or something, right? You get a
Yeah.
1 year on him. Like that's a difference maker immediately that you know is a proven commodity. Because like we always say, they say statistically, and some of this is on the GMs for just drafting bad football players, but
Correct.
statistically, half of the first round picks don't make it, right? Like they don't make it to the second contract with the team. So it's only a 50-50 chance anyway. So why not trade that for something that's a proven commodity? That's what I'm going to do. If I'm in the back end of the first round and my team has a real shot at the Super Bowl, and I'm not talking about those teams that think they have it. I'm talking about like one of the better rosters, right? Like because I know
Right.
every NFL fan, they want to be like, yeah, we could
All
win it. Like it's like,
32.
okay, but are you top 5 to top 6, right? If I'm, or maybe I'll stretch it to top 8. If you're in that top 8 and you have a chance to go get a difference maker, even if that's for 2 years, I'm
Mhm.
offloading that first round pick.
Listen, that's a key thought, and I like it though because, like you said, trading the first late in the rounds, right, for a Tyreek Hill. You pair that with like a second or whatever, and you go get a Tyreek Hill. If you're the Minnesota Vikings, I think Kirk Cousins' job is a lot easier than just throwing to Justin Jefferson, right? We saw what
Right.
that move did for Tua when he was healthy this past season, right? So I like it, Keith. I like that thought of, because at the end of the day, draft picks, while they're cheaper, there's still a risk instead of going for a proven commodity, right? Like you're not drafting you're not drafting an all pro with any of your
And
picks
sometimes
when you can get an all
it's
pro with that pick for a veteran player.
yeah, and it's like what they say. Sometimes you get what you pay for, right? You want cheap, you're gonna get cheap results. So if you want some, you
Facts.
gotta pay for it, right? Then that's just how it goes. If you go to a nice steakhouse, man, you gonna get a good quality steak. Now, if you go to possibly the taco truck and you ask for steak, it's totally different steak, right? But that's just what it is, man. So I had that thought, and I'm really thinking about team building. And I know last year, heading into last year, and there were talks and rumblings, hey, the Giants may be willing to part with Saquon Barkley for a first
Mhm.
round pick. And everybody said, ain't no way. Like, I don't never pay a Gale first round pick, right? It's like, okay, cool. Not a guy that ran you to ran the New York Giants over to the playoffs. Guess what? He's not going for a first round pick anymore. You're going to have to
No.
offload a couple other things. Then you talk about Christian McCaffrey, right? And what he meant to that football team, the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers won a was that their fifth string quarterback? I don't even know at this point, right? Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah.
They were so deep down, but Christian McCaffrey was still able to carry that team, and that was simply offloading of some draft picks, right? And now you have a difference maker at the running back position. So man, I thought about that, and like I said, if I'm in that top 7 to 8ish range, I'm probably going to Los Angeles Rams. I'm going my guy Les Snead, and I'm to hell with them picks. I can't say it on airways, man, but y'all know the phrase, man. I'm
Thank you.
offloading them picks, and I'll go and I'll just refix it after that, man. Now we know the Rams in a bad spot right now, but we won the Super Bowl.
I appreciate you making my editing job so much easier, but not saying the actual word of this show. But guys, listen, that is our new segment, man. That is a key. That's Coach K's key thought. For the NFL draft and how teams can really make things easier on themselves. And really, if you're a contender, let's put it like that. But as always, we thank you guys for all the love and support. Go subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to get the latest episode as soon as it's available of the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. So go do that. Thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today. Come back with us again tomorrow for Keith Sanchez. You can find him on Twitter at The Talent Code. I'm Damian Parson, DP_NFL. Come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.